Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are having a fantastic day. So in today's video, we will be talking about the long range outlook. I will spend the first 2 to 3 minutes of the video talking about the extreme short range because there is a large influential cold air mass that I've been talking about for the last few weeks, and I want to briefly run over that. But the majority of the video will be talking about the long range and the potential activity that we'll be setting up across the western United States that could lead to a few big systems, even early snow potentially across Yellowstone, Idaho, Montana, but areas that aren't completely unfamiliar with snow during late August and early September. But it is nonetheless interesting to see it. For the sake of time, I will be showing you only the GFS model with this cooldown because, again, I want to focus more on the long range that is outside of the scope of this cooldown. But let me briefly run over it. So as I've been mentioning for days at this point, this will cause a large cooldown for a central portion of the United States into the northeast, the south, and even into portions of the southwest with monsoons that are directly related with this high pressure moving down with the cold air. There will be heat across the northwestern United States and across southwestern Canada. That unfortunately will be, those areas will not see any relief. So notice that by Monday, so 2 days from when I'm recording this video, by Monday we see quite a bit of cool temperatures and temperature readings that are 8 to 12 to 16 degrees below average. Very cool. We also see that stripe of very cool temperatures across Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, and Kansas, and that is to do again mainly with cloud cover on top of this cool air mass, which really again provides some pretty chilly readings. Let me just show you what the map can look like for anyone at this given time. You can see Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, potentially according to the GFS, seeing readings similar to what the UP of Michigan and northern Wisconsin might be seeing on those days. So definitely chilly, but notice that the rest of the country also very chilly. And I think this will be welcomed by a lot of people as it's been pretty hot summer for most areas. Notice that by Tuesday, this thing continues pressing further into the southern United States. Do note Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and eastern California are also seeing quite a bit of cooler temperatures. If I show you on the 2-meter temperature shaded, that is very nice. I mean, sometimes these areas can see hundreds at this time of the year still. So that is very something that a lot of these people will definitely take gladly. And also on top of that, we will be seeing some drought relief in the form of monsoon rains across the southwest. Let's go back to this anomaly graph and push this into Wednesday. Notice that at this point, it's abating from the northern areas. North Dakota, Minnesota, and the UP at this point are potentially even seeing warmer temperatures than average. There might be a secondary blast across some of those northern areas that clips them, but that secondary blast into this late upcoming work week won't really dig its way down into the southern United States or really even into the central United States. Do note that we have, a lot of those blue colors kind of becoming more patchy across these areas. We have, again, mainly cool weather here to do with cloud cover as opposed to the air mass, but this thing definitely lingers. You can see there is no heat wave that replaces it immediately. By next weekend, we have a more warm weekend than the one that's upcoming for these areas, but again, still leaning towards the cool side. And as we go really far into time, we see an area of cool weather develop across the northwest and not the central United States. So I'm going to continue using the GFS to show you this potential pattern change in a really long term across the northwest. I will also take a look at the European though, but for now the GFS. So starting off at Wednesday of this upcoming Wednesday, so not too far out. And notice that the monsoon rains, as I've been mentioning, are continuing across a good portion of the southwest into Utah, Nevada, mainly Colorado, New Mexico, those kind of front range areas getting a lot of that precipitation. And that continues, right? You can see it continues into Thursday, Friday, Saturday, but it eventually does move away. And what the models, especially the GFS, more consistently now, but the European did hint at this on and off through the last few days, which I will show you. The GFS does show a larger system potentially moving into the northwest at the last days of August into early September. So further out, but not terribly far out. I mean, we are already approaching later part of August, as hard as that may be to believe. Time flies, doesn't it? And do note that this is more of a circular low pressure that is more powerful, it is more potent, and more, not just like a wave of precipitation. It definitely is something that has a spin to it. And do note that that is also going to be the culprit that potentially brings cool air. And not just cool, a lot colder air, especially compared to what you guys will be seeing in this upcoming heat wave that will be affecting the northwest. So let me go back to the precipitation now, and can you continue running this? Notice we see continued activity across Utah, Colorado, Arizona. Again, kind of to do with monsoon energy, but at this point also being helped by this large system. And some of these anomalies, again, will be pretty chilly across the Northwest during that time. Now, this is the 12Z model run, so the one that came out today at noon. Let's take a look at the one that came out just a few hours ago. So let's again go back to the precipitation graphic and show you that while we have rain occurring right now from the monsoons, again, as I showed you, as we run this through Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we see more and more precipitation hitting the Northwest and less across the Southwest as, again, that pattern changes, a major pattern change, right? So do note that we do see some snow across some of these areas, but that's not the snow I was talking about. It's probably hard to see and pick up, but there are some blue specks on the map right there across British Columbia. And note that the GFS does show quite, again, a large area of spin and vorticity, almost like a cyclone moving in here, and you can see that we have quite a bit of more of those blue colors developing across Idaho, the Bitterroots into the Cascades, into Alberta there could be a decent bit of snow that is pretty expansive. And you may be like, oh, this is just mountain snow, nothing unusual for this time of the year. And that's not necessarily true because it's going to be a lot colder for these areas. Let me show you the 2-meter temperature anomalies that are going to be occurring across these same areas during that time frame of that snow, and you will see why it is definitely earlier than normal, because these anomalies, as you can see, look at the graphic here, or the key, and it shows us that some of these are going to be approaching 16 degrees below average on Celsius, so potentially even 25 degrees on Fahrenheit, which is going to allow for especially those higher areas to see early mountain snow with a system that brings in that cooler air. So yeah, the Northwest potentially is going to be seeing a lot cooler air in the further out time frame. Again, in this first upcoming, I guess, shorter period to medium time frame, it's definitely going to feel hot, and it's not going to feel like snow falling anywhere anytime soon. But as we develop towards the longer range, there's definitely going to be a growing and increasing chance of that snowfall and that cool off. So what I did is I zoomed in on the northwestern and southwestern Canadian region, and we're looking right now at the GFS total predicted snowfall. I know, I can't believe I'm talking about potential snowfall in late August, but it's really not as crazy as you would think. It's definitely early if it were to occur to this level as this model is showing, which again, it's far out, but this is a long range outlook, so it's in the name that this is, you know, probably won't occur to definitely the detail this is showing. Maybe might be more, but might also very well be less. But you can see some of these areas picking up even those green colors, which indicate over a foot of snow. On the U.S. side, a little less, but Yellowstone would definitely see its first snow system dumping a few inches of snow. So that would definitely take on some surprising characteristics for some tourists that may be across those areas in that park still, you know, for late summer. So definitely something to keep an eye on for. I want to now show you the European model. I am right here in the corner. Hi, I had to move my little webcam icon to not block as many areas. So the European model is interesting with this regards because it went from showing this system in a very similar fashion to what the GFS is showing currently. So let me run through this. And this was yesterday's model at noon. So this is what came out yesterday. And you can see that we're ignoring all this stuff that's happening in the meantime because we're not worried about that. What we want to worry about is this system right here. Again, around that same time frame, potentially that first full work week of September, we see a large cut-off low pressure. So it's pretty slow, but it's moving in from the west, and it's bringing in showers, storms, and potentially, again, even the threat of snow. Not as much as what the GFS was showing, but still there nonetheless. And then you could see that transpires into a lot of activity for the areas further downstream across the Midwest. However, what's interesting is that now I'll show you the most recent model run, the one that came out today at noon on August 23rd. And I will show you something that is very, very interesting. Notice that it continues showing this cool off, which has been going on in the short term, right? These monsoons, and it does try introducing some sort of system activity across the Northwest, but notice that it takes them further into British Columbia and pretty much doesn't really show much across the west. Tries showing some sort of a system spinning off there across California, west of California, but nothing really hits the coast, and we don't really even see a cool off, which now I want to show you the temperatures with the European model. So now we're back to tropical tidbits, and we're looking at the 2-meter temperature anomaly of the European. My webcam is now in the bottom right corner. I don't know my directions, as you can see. JK. Okay, so notice that the European, this is the model from yesterday at noon. So that's when it showed that system, and correlating with the fact that it showed that system, it also brought a lot of cool air. And I don't know if you're seeing this, but this looks really similar to what the GFS is currently showing with its most recent model run. So it's interesting. The European picked up on it first, then it backed off of it. The GFS at that time also, interestingly, did not show it, and now the GFS is showing it. So it's been kind of going back and forth, and we will see if this actually amounts to anything. This is, after all, a long-range outlook, so it's kind of just like potential things that could occur, give you some thoughts, and it's not really necessarily a forecast of what's going to happen in one given area. Because as you can see, that the confidence is pretty low here. But again, the temperatures were definitely pretty blue here, which, sorry, the colors were pretty blue, which indicates a lot cooler than average temperatures. And then again, with the most recent model run, the Europeans started showing, or would start showing cooler temperatures here if it was like the previous one, but you can see it doesn't. It continues a rather extreme heat wave across portions of the northwest United States and southwestern Canada. The fact that it's so extreme makes me think that it's less likely, so maybe it's wrong with its most recent model run. So I am slightly leaning towards that cooler scenario going on, but again, the confidence is very low, so we'll just have to wait and see. But again, yeah, if that were to occur, that would introduce some extreme heat across the northwestern United States and southwestern Canada. Again, this may not seem like intense heat, even to me, and I'm from Chicago, right? But again, it's the averages that are important here. They normally don't see 80s in September. That would be the equivalent of probably seeing close to 100, if not over, across Chicago, and across the south probably 110, 115. So again, everything is a perspective. So yeah, it's either apparently the European now showing a heat wave or potentially a cool off with early snow. So we will have to wait and see on what exactly happens. So with the models being all a mess, let's take a look at what the Climate Prediction Center has to say. So again, this would be occurring somewhere around that September 1st, 2nd, 3rd time frame, that major pattern change across the northwest. And you can see that with their daily temperature outlook, or sorry, not their daily, their day temperature outlook at that time frame, they show warmer colors. So they're definitely probably more agreeing with what the European model is showing. They're definitely not dark colors, so they're not confident about it, which makes sense. The GFS is showing cooler colors there. But you can see in terms of the precipitation, they are showing above average precipitation, which kind of is a little contradictory because the European with its warmer scenario is also a drier one, while the GFS with its cooler scenario is a wetter one. So they're kind of doing a little bit of both. They're like, okay, we believe it'll be warmer, but not necessarily drier and wetter. So we'll have to wait and see. But it is a potential change, and it is something we will definitely have to keep an eye on for. So I know that I've been talking a lot about the northwest and southwestern Canada area, and you may be wondering, okay, well, how about the rest of the United States? And the reason I've kind of avoided those areas is because there really isn't going to be anything that extraordinarily interesting, right? So for the meantime, yes, there will be that cool off, which I've talked about and went over at the beginning of the video. And then we have that monsoon activity, right, which is going on across the southwest. But as this cool down breaks down towards this late part of this upcoming work week, we see a lot of this precipitation move further east, which allows some more activity across, say, the plains, the Great Lakes, the Northeast. Again, no crazy big storm. There will be some severe weather threats that we'll have to monitor as we get in the shorter term and get a clearer look at this. And again, no really secondary cool off. There was some thoughts of that potentially, like a second major cool off wave I talked about yesterday briefly. That seems to have gone away mostly. And I would rather argue that there is potentially a larger heat wave that could be setting up into middle and early September. But again, that is also something we'll have to wait and see on. Notice that the 2-meter temperature anomalies following that cool off are mixed, where we have cloud cover, it's cool, where we have no cloud cover, we have warmth, and it does seem that as you go further and further out, some of this warm gets a little stronger and stronger. So that is something I'd be leaning on. And again, the fact that we would be seeing a heat wave across the east would in fact support potentially the west and northwest being cooler. So I do think that is the more logical scenario at this point. And also supports that a cool scenario and potentially larger storm across the northwest if we are to see such a profound heat wave across the Midwest. Again, this is far out, obviously, but there have been some signs for this for a decent bit. Otherwise, though, that's pretty much it. I wanted to just give you a quick rundown. So again, cool down for the meantime across the eastern 2/3 of the country with a heat wave across the northwest, and then potentially around late August, early September timeframe, a cool off with a larger storm across the northwest, and activity of showers and storms across the east, which don't look that extraordinary, but definitely there, and then potentially heat wave building. across the east. That is basically it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all on the next episode. See ya. Bye.